Okay, we are live with 360 Info Network, page 2. We have very esteemed guests with us. Our brother Louis Jefferson was just on with us on the radio program 360 Info Network. And we have also been joined by Metasebya Solomon. I just want to read the impressive credentials of these two individuals that have joined us. Metasebya Solomon is a research scientist with 10 plus years of experience in biomedical research and development. She's a noted speaker on biomedical and biotechnical applications. She's the author of multiple peer-reviewed publications, including the journal Nanomedicine. She's the founder and productions director of the African Liberation Lab of Revolutionary Culture, also known as All Art Culture, and the productions editor of The Dirty Beaker. She attended Washington University in St. Louis. She has a PhD in biomedical engineering, and she also has a BS in biomedical engineering with digital applications focus from the University of Texas at Austin. Brother Louis Jefferson's medical training at the University of Toledo School of Medicine and graduate education at the University of Pittsburgh Graduate School of Public Health, as well as the University of Connecticut School of Pharmacy, has been instrumental in developing his multidisciplinary approach to clinical research, pharmacology, and medicine. He's the founder and executive director of the African Liberation Lab of Revolutionary Culture and the founder of the Dirty Beaker. He has a BS in human physiology from Kent State University and a master's of education in health education from Kent State University, MPH Graduate School of Public Health at the University of Pittsburgh, University of Toledo School of Medicine, and the University of Connecticut Graduate School of Pharmacy. Quite impressive, quite a bit there to unpack, but I think it speaks to the fact that you are more than qualified to talk about the subject matter at hand. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to 360 page 2. And also my other show, it's called Open Door. We also have been joined by Brother Lynn Hampton, who is, he is the producer, host, founder, and the creator of 360 Info Network. So welcome to the broadcast, Brother Lynn.
Yes,
and
sir.
yes, and welcome to you all. So glad to have you. Hello, Metasebya.
Hello, thank you for having us. It's an honor to be on the show.
Okay. So since we just had Louis for an entire hour and we haven't heard from you, I want to give you the first shot at telling us who you are and what you do and why it's important for us to know the things that you know.
Well, my background has been biomedical engineering. I've done a lot of research and building a fluorescence molecular tomography for cancer detection. And I have done from small animal imaging all the way down. And I have worked in hospitals as well, setting up hospitals back in Ethiopia, where I am from, for biomedical workshops. And I've worked in medical devices industry, the biggest ones you can name. And this is close to my heart because I've seen this vaccine being advertised to our people more than the rest. And I feel like the information given is not sufficient, and we should tell the truth to our people. I am more motivated to share what I know based on the biomedical engineering aspect, what is the data telling us, and to tell them, here's what I know, and it's up to them to make the decision based on the information that's provided, based on what is DNA, what is RNA, what is this vaccine doing to our body, what is information do we have. And some of the information I've gathered is not even shown to the public. So I would be happy to share that as well on a slide. So it's coming from my heart to teach people what I know.
Okay. And could you talk about some of the research that you've been doing? It indicated that you had 10 plus years. What kinds of research have you been doing?
Yeah, so for my PhD program, I did build a fluorescence tomography system. I built it from ground up. It's for lymph node detection as well as detection for pharmacokinetics of any drug. So I built this system. It's an instrument and I have done phantom imaging. It's like if you inject a dye into your body to detect whether you have a cancer or not, they use the lymph node. So what can we do to detect that in a safe way instead of using radioactive, which is cancer causing? There's a safer way, that's fluorescent dyes. So I built the system and showed it works in a small animal imaging, where I inject a safer dye and detect it. And as well, since it was a new imaging modality, I have to validate it with the gold standard, which is SPECT or PET, where they use it for cancer detection on your lymph node. So I combined my system with those and showed the system I built matches with what's on the current modalities as well. So I have publication on those. I have publication on the review of cancer, what is available cancer imaging and optics. That's my background. I have done that, and I have also been part of research on kidney lithotripsy to destroy kidney stones as well. And I have done a lot of other research related to the African American disease.
Oh, okay. So at this point, we want to jump in and welcome Lewis Jefferson. I'm going to get that right, brother.
That's all right. That's all right, brother.
That's so funny, man. I can't get over that. But welcome you to the broadcast. And for the benefit of those who weren't able to listen to the radio program, could you talk about your background, your credentials, and what you'll be able to share with those who are viewing us live on Facebook and YouTube now?
Yes, as I mentioned on the earlier show, my background is in medicine from the University of Toledo School of Medicine, and a background in pharmacy from the University Graduate School of Pharmacy at University of Connecticut, as well as graduate degree in epidemiology from the University of Pittsburgh, graduate degree in health education from Kent State, and a bachelor's degree in human physiology from Kent State. I've married all of that information and all that education together to establish my own company in biotech, but also work in the biotech industry for the last 25 years in helping develop anti-infectives, anti-cancer type products, and central nervous system disease products to help the population to heal and begin to mend from a lot of chronic diseases. So that's my background. If you like any more, I'd share that.
Well, there is quite a bit there. I see that you have something called the African Liberation Lab of Revolutionary Culture. Talk about what that is.
Yes. So Metasebya and I came up with that idea because we knew that culture was a strong component for our development, to have an appreciation of who we are in order to develop our purpose and move and act on our purpose. And culture was a key component to that, based on our studies of Amilcar Cabral, our studies of Kwame Nkrumah, and how you need to manage that cultural piece in order to get people to move for themselves, to produce themselves and build a better life for themselves. And we felt that a lot of the culture here in the United States that our people as African people are receiving are counter to their productivity. As Brother Sunra would mention, is that, you know, we act certain ways because we don't have a music or culture that resonates with our spirit, and we felt that we would give the people information and culture that resonates with their spirit, that allows them to uplift themselves.
Okay, so it's another healing modality, but it's on the cultural side, you know, in addition to and in connection with the science that you are about.
I love it, Vince. Yeah, I can't sum it up myself. As a matter of fact, I should have asked you the question about all our culture.
Okay, I want to bring Metasebya back and talk to her about this thing that you have called the Dirty Beaker. What is the Dirty Beaker?
The Dirty Beaker was founded by Lewis. It's regarding what kind of health information to bring to our people that's not generally available in the national media. And to break it down in a way that they understand it. Again, bringing in the culture, and as well as giving them information how they can make changes in their day-to-day life. So we wanted to have like a well-rounded information. On the cultural side, like you said, music, and it's like a holistic approach that we were aiming with the Dirty Beaker and merging it with the all our culture.
Okay.
And Louis can add more to that.
I can't add any more to that. Meta is well said.
Are you sure about that, Louis? I mean, in that it was your brainchild. But I really like the holistic approach. I think one of the problems that we have with the allopathic model is that it's just so compartmentalized and so fragmented, and you don't have fluid communication between all of those entities. And in the process, things get missed and things get left out in the midst of the practicing and the experimentation that is being done on human beings.
Yeah.
I have an important question. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. You know, with that, it recanted or made me think about this one company, and I guess this is for the both of you, making answer, and especially the sister from Ethiopia. It's a company in Africa, I think maybe out of Nigeria, that's doing a genome collection, and that they're collecting a lot of DNA or genes that I guess that they could use to help deal with the African American or the African population and dealing with disease and dealing with I guess remedies that is, I guess, cultural ethnic specific with us. You know, are you familiar with that company in Africa?
No, I'm not. No,
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
familiar.
Yeah, I forgot. I want to call they call it Geno X or something like that, and they're doing a big collection of genes in Africa, and they're saying that their goal and mission is to deal with the remedies that are, like you say, that deals with our more so with our physiology, because I would assume that a lot of the medicines and things that are produced is from the perspective and the calibration from someone else.
Yeah, but I would be very worried about that, because even when they're making those disease like medicine or anything, they don't take the Caucasian genetic genotype to make those medication. The only problem is that when they're making those disease medication, most of our people were not part of the clinical trial and previous medications. So it's not like they took out their genetics and then created those medications. So I would be very worried about someone taking my genotype, collecting it, and using it. They can use it for a lot of things that could harm us, but for biodiverse, could be a lot of things that could go on. But I would be suspicious, because we have come so far in medicine without collecting our genotype, our genetic material. So I would be worried about. And also, one of the things that make me worry about this vaccine is that all of a sudden there's a big interest in us to participate, but prior we were excluded from any of the clinical trials. If you look at participation in for medicine, the blood pressure medicine, any of that, we were not part of it. That's why the calibration is off, because they were focused on the Caucasian, they were part of the clinical trial. So the dosage and everything is well calibrated for them. So I would be very suspicious of that.
Well, one quick follow-up to that. Can we, and you all may agree to this, can we lay to rest the hydrochloroquine situation? I know it's widely used in Africa. Could you shed some light on that? Is it as dangerous as they say? Because I know it's widely used in Africa. So what are your thoughts on that? Either one of you.
Well, as far as hydrochloroquine, I mean, there are two different types. There's hydrochloroquine and there's chloroquine. It's been utilized and it's been found to be safe for malaria. So to say it's deadly and dangerous, that's not true. But can it be deadly and dangerous if you have some heart disease or some underlying heart conditions? Yes, it can. And if you utilize it for COVID-19, is it proven for that? No, it isn't. Have you seen some isolated cases where maybe it seemed to work? Yes, it has. So there are not really good clinical trials to prove that it does work. There are some clinical trials that have been utilized that pretty much says that it was not effective, and then that there were more heart problems from people that had underlying heart problems that it created an issue for. That's all I can say about it.
Okay.
Metasebya, did you want to add something to that?
No, I think that's pretty much. And also, it's not just Africa that's being used. It's in Cuba as well. I think it's being used in China as well.
China, India, a lot. China, yeah.
Yeah, it's been used a lot in China and Cuba. So it's not just Africa that's being used.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have the luxury of time without commercial interruption, I want to dig a little bit into the two vaccines that are being used in America right now. Could you talk about the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, the differences between them and the concerns that you have about them?
Okay, so yeah, the differences between the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine is very little, because both of them utilize messenger RNAs. Both of them utilize lipid nanoparticle in order to present that messenger RNA into the cell. And so based on the other program, I don't know if everybody tuned into the other program we just left, I'll give a little bit of background on what a messenger RNA vaccine is, and give a little bit of background on what DNA, RNA, and protein is. So with DNA, RNA, and protein, that's the central dogma of what makes us who we are. It makes our lung cells, our kidney cells, our eye cells, everything that manufactures and makes us is part of what our DNA is. It's like the blueprint of a house. It's like a recipe book for who we are. And that's what DNA is. And what RNA is, if you use the analogy of the cookbook, you must say that the recipes would be the messenger RNA. Is, okay, we want to make eyes here, we want to make kidneys here, we want to make cake here, we want to make stew here. So the recipe is given in the cookbook, and messenger RNA is the recipe. You have inside of your cells what we call ribosomes, and ribosomes would be the typewriters. They would be the people that are going to type up all of the information that you want to tell the people about how to cook this meal. In this case, how to cook the part of your body, your kidneys, your eye cells, and they form the proteins. So when you have a messenger RNA and you have a ribosome inside of your cell, when Moderna and Pfizer inject a messenger RNA with a synthetic lipid nanoparticle, which I'll talk about, that messenger RNA has to be read by the ribosome. And just like a typer, the ribosomes inside of your cells can mistype. In that case, we call it mistranslate for a ribosome. And once it mistranslates, the ribonucleic acids are based on like an alphabet. Like we have an alphabet to write sentences and words. The ribonucleic acids, which is in the messenger RNA, can be mistyped. And if it's mistyped, it throws off what amino acid that corresponds to that makes. And once that amino acid is altered, then it makes a foreign protein in our bodies. And that could become problematic. It could cause connective tissue disorders. It could cause cancer. It could cause fibrosis. And we find that problematic. It's the same technology that Pfizer and Moderna are using. Also, at some point, I want to get into what AstraZeneca is doing as well, because it's even more problematic. But I hope that I've described enough what is happening with the Moderna and Pfizer messenger RNA vaccines and why they are problematic.
Okay, and there are some other ingredients in the vaccines aside from the messenger RNA. Could you talk about some of the other elements that go into making a vaccine?
Okay, yes. So some of the other elements, I mean, of course, in every compound there are excipients, or what we call extra materials that are involved in the development of any sort of medical product. And there are some products that are inside of these vaccines that we find problematic, and that would be the lipid nanoparticles as far as I'm concerned. So with lipid nanoparticles, our cells are made of plasma membranes. And what I mean by that is that every one of our cells in our hands, our skin, our eyes is coated by something that we call lipids and phosphates. And they all combine together to coat around the cell to keep all of the material that makes the proteins that your cell needs to make for your body to make you who you are. It's encoded by a plasma membrane. That plasma membrane is made of phosphates and lipids. Scientists have developed what we call lipid nanoparticles to mimic that. And by mimicking that, it allows for the, in this case, messenger RNA to connect with the cell, and by what we call an endocytic process, it gets with the cell and it kind of melts into the plasma membrane that allows for it to expand and let the mRNA get into the cell. But when that lipid nanoparticle merges with the plasma membrane, it doesn't go away. The lipid nanoparticle remains. And cells make tissue, and tissues make organs. And if you have the lipid nanoparticles in your cells, they begin to multiply in your tissue. That multiplies in your organs. And it can create foreign proteins or foreign lipids and phosphates in your tissues and your organs, and that can mount autoimmune responses in order to sort of fibrosis and connective tissue disorders.
That's really interesting. And Metasebya, I think you wanted to jump in, so I'm going to let you take over. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also like what he described is also what is cancer. It's producing a known protein, modified protein that the body doesn't know. So he just described what cancer means. So this is also one of the side effects, that expected long-term effect is the of the vaccine is cancer as well. Can I share my screen?
Sure. You should have that option on your side.
Yeah, so can you see the slides?
It's coming up now.
Okay, so do you want to go over this, or you want me to go?
You popped it up, so you go through it. I'll help you along the way if you need some help with it.
Okay, so what happens is that one of the difference that also we're skeptical about this vaccine is that the timeline used, if you look at it, they do the traditional, preclinical study, they do toxicology study, and then they go to clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then they have regulatory. But if you look at this vaccine, like they didn't do any of the preclinical study. They used what they had before, the data from pre-existing, and then they'll be like, okay, let's just directly go to clinical human trials. So my question is that, okay, what is your data on this toxicology study on small animals? Where is the data? And they did it in parallel, and they're not giving us what those toxicology study is. Usually it takes 2 to 4 months. And then they have the clinical trials, they have it overlapped. So we don't know what is the long-term effect or any of this. We know the short-term side effect. We've been told what the short-term side effect is, but we don't know what is the long-term adverse effect of the vaccine, But what we expect are that autoimmune disease and cancer and gene mutation are the expected side effects. So we have to ask ourselves, when they combine it like this, what is it the data that we're missing, especially that we know this is a new technology. We don't have any pre-existing data to say, okay, this could be the side effect we should expect in a long term. So that's one of the side effects. And the other thing is, they told us about how effective it is, but what I want to go to is that we don't have we don't have any independent published animal data, but other previous vaccines have performed and published it. And this is critical. Deadly effects are often seen until this step. So all this is missing part. And known complication, we talked about it: neurological disease, transverse myelitis, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré. And so far, we have seen 2 transverse myelitis cases and 4 Bell's palsy cases. So this was right before it went national injection. But I'm sure this number, it's much larger and more data would be coming in. The other thing is also, I really want to emphasize this data I'm showing on this slide. It's very critical because this is coming in from information for healthcare professionals. You see here, it's a PDF that is uploaded on the server given to the healthcare professionals in UK from the manual of the vaccine, where it says for fertility, pregnancy, and lactation. They said because there's no or limited amount of data on animal productive toxicity studies have not been completed. So they're saying we're not recommending it during pregnancy. So they're saying for women of childbearing age, pregnancy should be excluded before vaccination. But we see it on national TV, women on childbearing age being given this dose, this vaccination. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this information not being public, or not the public not aware of this? And they're saying,
your first hand, wear a mask, protect yourself and others. Give those hands a 20-second shower with soap and water.
is this me or?
I hear it too.
I don't know where this came from. It's actually a spot that I recorded that gives suggestions on how to protect yourself from COVID-19.
Elderberry, zinc, and echinacea from the stove. Get some fresh air. Go climb some stairs. Let go of stress. Make sure you rest. Your breath.
Okay. I should have let that whole thing play because it really has some good information in it. Maybe I'll play it at the end of the broadcast. So I'm sorry for the interruption. Please proceed.
Yeah, so can you see? So I think we were disconnected with that when I was talking about the pregnancy, where they're recommending for any childbearing age women not to take it, to be excluded from vaccination. For breastfeeding, it's unknown whether it's excreted into human milk. So they're saying a risk to newborns or infants cannot be excluded. So they're saying should not be used during breastfeeding. And then they're saying for fertility, it's unknown whether the vaccine has an impact on fertility. So that includes men and women. So we should be aware of this information that's coming in. This is exactly data coming in, information for healthcare professionals given by the producers, by Pfizer. And we should ask why this is not being public. It's not on public media. And why is our people being given this vaccine?
Now, Sister Solomon, you said
Yes.
this is coming directly from Pfizer?
Yes. This
Wow.
is directly coming. So I can share the link for people. I put it on the chat, you can see it. It's from UK. You can click on this link and it takes you information for healthcare professionals given in the UK.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing.
So it's on the chat. I don't know if you see it, the link, the PDF that's on the chat.
Do you see it, Vince?
I'm looking. It's probably in the private chat. Let me just check and see.
It's on the
not,
private chat.
It's in the private chat.
Yeah, if not, email it to us too. I would definitely love to see that.
So should I put it on the comment section?
Yes,
Or
yes, put it in the comment section, and in that way, everyone will be able to see it.
Okay, I don't think how do I put it on the comment section? I'm not seeing. It's not allowing me. Maybe you can put it.
I'm gonna put the public chat should be viewable now. Do you see it?
No.
I will copy and paste this to the respective pages, the 360 Info Network Facebook page, my page, and I'll pin it on the YouTube post that goes up after this. So we'll definitely capture this information.
Yes, please do. That's the really information I want to get it out to our, sisters and brothers, especially, the women. They should be aware of this.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, when you were talking about pregnancy, so are you suggesting that they test women for pregnancy before they administer the vaccine? Is there a possibility that someone might be pregnant and not know it, and then
exactly
infected afterwards?
Yes, and also if you're planning to get pregnant in a very short time period, they're saying not to take it. So if they're saying for a short time period, okay, how did they come up 2 months, 3 months? If you have a plan of getting pregnant, don't take it. That's what their data is saying. They're really officially telling you we don't have any data. They're saying there are no or limited amount of data from the use of COVID vaccine. Animal reproductive toxicity studies have not been completed. So it's not recommended during pregnancy. And it says for women childbearing age, pregnancy should be excluded before vaccination. And then they say, in addition, women of childbearing age should be advised to avoid pregnancy for at least 2 months after their second dose. So they're saying 2 months, but why 2 months? Where is this? This is a random number for me, unless they show me why 2 months. And I'm sure Louis can talk about, we don't have a lot of data, the spring test, where that could be associated with that, but we still need a lot of data. But they're officially telling you they don't have data on this information.
Louis, I see that you're nodding. I think you might have something to contribute to what you just shared with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's factual, more factual data to show that this compound is just not ready for human inoculation. And this warp speed is a warped sense of mentality. It's a warped capitalist sense of mentality to say, okay, the profit and money is worth the safety of our people. You have to wonder. And I mentioned on another show too, Time for Awakening, that when you look at the rush speed of this, I think, and this is only an opinion, I think that based on the fact that we know we have weaponized viruses, because our defense team in the United States has utilized weaponized viruses and developed them, there is a need to try to begin to develop vaccines fast in order to protect the human population if a weaponized virus occurs. Personally, I think that this is sort of a test run as far as how to test whether we can develop a vaccine in warp speed in order to combat a weaponized virus, because there's no reason why we should be rushing and having this great propaganda promotion scheme nationally and internationally to take these two particular vaccines, because there's so many more vaccines under development. And like we said in one of our podcasts with Freedom Now, is that in other countries, in China and Russia, in India, they are already offering vaccines that have utilized technology to develop vaccines in a manner of which is more tried and true safety and safer for the population of people. So there's no other way to describe why we're doing it this way in the United States, and why these two particular vaccines are so important, and why that African people here in America are being targeted intentionally to be the first to take these vaccines.
Yeah, there was a report that came out that a French doctor was suggesting that they tested first on Africans.
Yes.
And I also want to bring to your attention Operation Warp Speed. It's a public-private partnership initiated by the U.S. government to facilitate and accelerate the development, manufacturing, and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. So this is not just a figure of speech. This is something that has been implemented. But at the same time, we have a divide in the medical community. There are a number of medical professionals who are saying, hey, I don't know if I want to take this vaccine. I can tell you that I've spoken personally to medical professionals who have reservations about it. And as I shared on the show, I know someone who works in the medical industry who took the shot and has Bell's palsy. So Metasebya, you indicated that there were 4 cases. Well, you can add 1 to that.
Yes.
And there were probably more that we don't know about, as you said.
Yes.
I also want to get to the idea based on what Lewis said about how vaccines have been weaponized. I heard a report that there were 500,000 Kenyan women who were adversely affected by a vaccine that had the effect of sterilizing them. Do you know anything about that, and can you validate that as an occurrence?
I don't know about that case, but Meta, I think you can talk to one case that you spoke about on a program regarding I think it was Pfizer.
Oh yeah, the Pfizer one. It's they use for during the meningitis epidemic in the late 90s. Pfizer did an experiment with their new drug. Even though there was something that was working, they did a clinical trial without telling them on 100 children. And out of those 100 children, I think 94 of them died afterward because it was, again, a rushed clinical trials, and Pfizer is sued because of that. And only 4 survived.
And they lost.
They lost. And also it was a very unethical clinical trials, and they did it in Africa and Nigeria. And without those consent form, without those families knowing, it was a clinical trials. And also the main reason that it was a big news and Pfizer got in trouble is because they rushed the data and they went in, they got approved, and I think 6 people died after they got approved by the FDA. And
that was the drug was called Trovan.
Yeah, Trovan, yes. That's why Pfizer got in trouble, is because of those 6 people died in the US, not because of the 96 people that throw the red flag. So because when they rush something like this without having a long term, again, they did it for 6 weeks and not like the longer term of the vaccine that is supposed to have. So every time they rush something like this, we have to pause and learn from the history what was happening and see, okay, give me the longer data. You have a new technology, show me your animal data, show me your toxicology data before I take it, and then take their word on when they're saying we don't have enough data on toxicology and what's gonna do to your reproductive health, because that's how we can, are they trying to take us out? Or I don't know. I'm not trying to be, again, it's not a conspiracy theory. I'm talking about pure science, and show me the data. You're not trying here to affect me.
Yeah, I remember that. I read something on that particular thing, and I believe that Pfizer was trying to go backdoor with some of the government officials there to try to get them to settle. And I believe he wound up settling. They could have got more, I believe, on the suit. And like you said, they rushed in there hastily to try to, go with their clinical trials with that meningitis breakout. And that's what happened. And now I think it was just only recently they settled that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, fairly recently. I would imagine about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you open a big can of worms there, Sister Solomon, with that data. I definitely want to read that because, for them excluding, see that is speaking to a lot of the conspiracy rhetoric that is going around about what your last statement as well about, why here and this whole Melinda Gates and Bill Gates push for this vaccine that in the motherland, and then you saying as far as pregnancy is concerned, how there needs to be a warning, or even if you're intending. And right now, Africa having an average population of about 19 or 20 years old, a younger population, and we know that Africa is the center of attention, from China and in these other places. So, it draws to some real concern.
Yeah, so the median age population in Ethiopia is 17 years old. Mm-hmm. So if you give it to them, like, what is that going to happen to them? So it's a lot of question that I have based on that. And I know there is a question on the comment section from Sharon. I think it says, when do you anticipate some of those companies going to have vaccine available? I'm assuming the alternative ones. So for the protein-based vaccine, so there's one in Russia that's also in phase 3 trials happening. It's called from the Vector Institute. And then there's a US one, a protein version, Novavax. Again, that's also in phase 3 trials, which is about the same phase as the one that's the Moderna and the Pfizer one. They're still in the phase in clinical trials, even though they're in emergency use. So those are already available and in clinical trials. The question we need to know is, how can we bring in those protein-based vaccine here in the US, be part of those clinical trials? And the other one is the virus-based vaccine, the Sinopharm. It's already approved in China, United Arab Emirates, in Bahrain, and maybe I can share my screen. So the virus-based vaccine, the Sinopharm inactivated, approved in China, United Arab, Bahrain, emergency use in Egypt. The Sinovac, again, it's much well-established technologies, limited use in China. Sinopharm Wuhan, again, in China. And another one, the Bharat Biotech, has a virus. Again, they're all in phase 3, which is the same as the Moderna and Pfizer, their emergency use in China and India. And the other one is the viral vector-based. We talked about, they have one phase 3 in Russia, emergency use in Belarus and other countries. AstraZeneca, they phase 3 that they have emergency use in Britain, India, and other countries. But we, as Louis has described this, about we have a lot of reservation on the AstraZeneca, but they're in other countries. We have CanSino, limited use in China, and the Johnson & Johnson, they're all in phase 3. So we can either be part of those clinical trials or wait until it's the same thing as where the Pfizer and Moderna are right now.
Mm-hmm. Can I say something about those types of vaccines?
Yes.
As you, and we thank you for posting those slides. There was something in the side when it says type of vaccine. It said 85, 80, 26. Someone said protein. One says CH 80, 20. That means something. And what it means is that there.
Okay, it seems as though we have lost his signal, and I'm not going to speculate on why that happened, but it seems as though it was very critical information. While we wait for his signal to return, are you able to elaborate on what he initiated, Metasebya?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here.
Back.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share those slides with those different?
No, I'll just explain it. So there are ways to make vaccines, and I talked about it early on the program, and I think it's important to say it here, and to answer the question that the person enter. I think it was, I think you said Sharon.
Sharon.
Okay, so the question to that is that Novavax is coming just like Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. So that Novavax is a protein-based vaccine. It's going to be safer because it's protein-based. It's not a messenger RNA vaccine. So keep your eye out for that one. Look on RAPS. It's Regulatory Affairs Professional Society.org, and you'll kind of follow when they're going to get approved. It's already being considered by the FDA for emergency use. There are 6 vaccines that are up for emergency use. Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca are only 3 of the 6. Novavax is one of them, so keep that in mind. Now, the vaccines and the way that they're made is very important for us to understand that the viral vector that they utilize the human coding, they utilize the coding of the adenovirus that affects human beings. Now, the adenovirus is the cold. We get the cold every year, 2 or 3 times. And we have no problem with the cold. They code it, they put the DNA or the RNA from the spike protein of the coronavirus inside of that in order for it to get into the cell. And once it gets into the cell can mount the ability to manufacture the spike protein through the DNA and create an immune response to that. And that's how that they develop the adenovirus coded ones. The protein coded vaccines, they take a piece of the coat. So the virus, here's my hands here. Inside my hands is the RNA of the virus. They coat the RNA with a coating. All viruses are coated. So you take a protein from that and you expose the body to it, and the body mounts an immune response to that. That's the safer form of developing a virus, because you're not giving the virus of any kind. You're exposing it to the coating. And if you are exposed to the virus anyway, you would be exposed to the coat. So it's not a problem. The AstraZeneca vaccine is a problem because they utilize the chimpanzee adenovirus. And the chimpanzee adenovirus is the cold virus in a chimpanzee, of which humans have never been exposed to. And if you continually expose a human to a virus from an animal, the human begins to utilize the DNA of that and make its own type of virus in a human that we don't even know what could happen. It's called a zoonotic effect. It's why we typically don't get viruses from animals, but if you expose people to it repeatedly, you begin to get that virus. Now, if you're injecting that into millions of people, you are initiating a zoonotic effect. You're initiating it through a synthetic means. You're injecting it and you're exposing it over and over again. And then once, if it mutates, you have to give another strand the next year and another strand the next year. And you're continually exposing to the chimpanzee adenovirus. And so that becomes a problem. And yet that is a vaccine that the United States is promoting as if it's safe for us to utilize in human populations, and it's only been tested for 50 days. For 50 days, when you normally develop a vaccine for 3 years to maybe even 15 years for some vaccine. For 50 days, the American population and scientific teams that are supposedly very, very smart are promoting that to our people. And that's one of the reasons why we're passionate about coming on to explain the science to people to make informed decisions.
I want to ask another question about the nature of these vaccines, because they're being given to a whole bunch of people who may have differences in their DNA. I mean, there are ethnic differences that exist on the face of this earth. Mm-hmm. And you're giving one vaccine to a whole bunch of different kinds of people, and there may be concerns about this one-size-fits-all approach.
Mhm.
Am I right to have a concern that maybe the one size fits all approach may not be the prudent approach?
In this case, the DNA that they develop is synthesized. Like, okay, for instance, our kidney cells. I know the exact sequence that makes a kidney cell, and as you said, Vince, but the exact code to make a kidney cell can vary in each person a little bit. But you're going to make pretty much a kidney cell if you know the genetic sequence of that kidney cell. They're saying that they know the genetic code of the spike protein. We're not so much concerned that there is a variation in our own DNA in that sense. We're concerned that the coronavirus DNA is going to change, not only yearly, but it's already changing. And if you're injecting it into human populations, expecting to make proteins that look like the spike protein, yeah, you're going to do that, but the spike protein has changed by that time. And so if you're utilizing that technology, you have a problem. And I hope that kind of gets close to your question.
So with that being said, is it going to be necessary for us to take a shot every year?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be necessary to take a shot every year because as you can see, even in the news, that the coronavirus spike protein is mutating.
Okay. There's a question in the chat from Brother Okambi. He wants to know, are there any research data from the SARS virus that can be applied to COVID?
Any research data in the SARS virus that can you repeat that?
I'm just reading the question as it was because this is SARS-CoV-2, right?
Oh, I see what he means. So he's
Yeah.
saying, is there any research data that says that some of what we're testing may be SARS-1 and not even SARS-2? Is that what he's saying? Maybe he's saying that, and that is the case. Like, and that's one question that I have. Like the people that come in to get tested to say, okay, we want to get on this test. We want to find out whether we've had COVID-19 or not. If you use a PCR test, that's polymerase chain reaction test, you're only going to get the virus in an immediate sense, meaning that if you've been exposed to the virus within the last month or so. But if you've been exposed to the virus 2 years ago or a year ago, you want to use an antibody test, and they're not even using antibody tests. And so, in order to find out whether you have COVID or not, typically, and specifically for these clinical trials that they're utilizing, they don't even use antibody tests. So people may have been exposed to SARS-CoV-1, and they've mounted an immune response to that already.
Okay, I think Lynn has a question. Lynn?
Yeah. One question here. I guess we need to make a footnote too, right here, is that the protection for these vaccines that are given to these companies, with all this research that we're talking about, that they're exempt from any type of liability. First, I want to say, but in dealing back to what Sister Solomon brought up and talked about, and I think we kind of already kind of knew a little bit about the possibility and the likelihood of using vaccines as some type of weaponry. And so, and digressing a little bit, into our conspiracy type of theories, which could be, very practical thinking at some point, that this being to me, a perfect virus for a weapon, and what I mean by it's asymptomatic qualities and the way it's been manipulated. Because I know we get into the, I read a little bit about viruses and we talked about the zoonotic effect and like you said, most viruses that deals with the transfer, from humans, from animals to humans, that's not, the case in most situations. So just to get us thinking a little bit, look at the possibility of this transformation happening and then it's being created to the point to where it's such a perfect situation to where it will lay dormant and be asymptomatic, and be as contagious as it can be. It seemed like that could be a perfect experimental trial in doing so.
Yeah, certainly is questionable. I mean, we can't say for sure, but we do know that, when you talk about Wuhan, we do know that there is a weapons manufacturing place in Wuhan, and they kind of blame it on the Chinese, but the United States contracts with China, the supposed enemy. They contract with China to develop their weaponized viruses. So
Right.
it's almost a ridiculous notion to say that we're at war with China, and then it coming out of Wuhan is questionable. I can't scientifically. We try to stick with the basics, but certainly, even scientifically, you're trying to look for the evolution of the virus. It's questionable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also I want to add, I think in Miami, University of Miami, or a hospital in Miami, there's this doctor where he's looking at corpse, of the testicles, people in fact who passed away from COVID, and it's found in the testicles, and so they're saying, it's going to be a long-term effect. What is that going to happen to the fertility of those men if you're infected, if it's found in the testicles? And they're also looking at now about the vaccine, how's that going to affect that? So we should look at, it's on the news in Miami, actually, all of this, so we can look at that as well. And one thing also I want to add, like Louis described really well about those lipid nanoparticles or any of that. And most of our African population here, they're affected. They have a lot of kidney disease, or they have dysfunctional liver because of, we have a lot of those high blood pressure, or, we have problems. So what we don't know is what the information I'm looking at, how is this vaccine is going to be excreted from my body. If I have a kidney problem, if I have a liver problem, how is this going to leave my body? Where is it going to stay? And any of that information is not available. It's a question I have that we need answers for. How's that lipid nanoparticles is going to leave my body? For how long is that going to stay? For how long is that going to make those proteins? Or where is that going to be excreted? If I have liver or kidney problem, what is going to happen to me?
Yes. I do want to say, I know people are like, I don't want to leave people hanging with that comment about the testicles. The Dirty Beaker did a long series, an hour series on the fact that there is another entry point for SARS-CoV-2. And that entry point is the CD147 receptor on seminiferous tubules. And the seminiferous tubules are in the testicles. So when you say that, you do touch upon a point that we do know that once the virus is inside the body, we do know that the entry point is typically through the respiratory tract or gastrointestinal system. But once it's in, there is another entry point, and that is the CD147 receptor on the seminiferous tubules, which are in the testicles.
Yes.
Okay, Louis and Metasebya, there are a lot of urban legends, conspiracy theories floating around out there. And I know you probably can't speak to them all. I know that there are probably some that are more popular than others. But if you could, can you talk about some of those conspiracy theories and dispel them if they should be dispelled? Like, the connection between the vaccine and 5G. That's one that we could talk about. From your research, from your professional opinion, based on the research that you've done, is there any reason that we should be concerned that if we take the vaccine, that somehow 5G is going to be used to manipulate us in any kind of way? Or are there any dangers involved as a result of that?
Meta, you seem to be anxious to have a comment about it. What do you? Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I don't have any information on that actually.
Right.
The only information I have is just on the biological aspect, on the biomedical data that we have, but not any of those relationships with the 5G. But it's something I can look it up and see if there is any scientific information correlation with that, and we can come back again and give you those information. But right now, I don't have any. I cannot comment on that.
Yeah,
I got one question.
Okay, go ahead.
Let Lewis
Yeah.
answer the question, Lynn, please.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, say it again.
I want Lewis to answer the question, and then we'll
Okay.
move forward.
Okay, yeah. As far as 5G is concerned, based on the rationale that people are presenting about 5G, and knowing the science, knowing how viruses work, it doesn't sound likely at all. The rationale between 5G and 4G and 3G, a lot of the philosophy says that every time you increase your G, that there's been some sort of virus that happened, and the correlation really doesn't match. It does.
Yeah.
You know, several. What happened? What was the G when smallpox hit the world? So I mean, it's like it doesn't add up scientifically to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak to say yay or nay on it, but scientifically, there's nothing that I've seen, and I look at holistic science and I look at technical science. I'm both. I would be more than interested, but I see no relationship.
Okay. Lynn, you had a question?
Yeah, it was just something that I was kind of backtracking a little bit, and when we talked about remedies and things that you can do a little bit on the broadcast earlier, you mentioned something. I know you talked about the some of the things like in the plums and the red onions and things like that. What's this, Caridin? Quercetin. But also you mentioned before that something you can do in dealing with if you had the COVID or having problems with mucus that helps breaks up the mucus. So I want to get that down before I forget to ask you.
Yes, and thank you for guiding it in that direction too. So I'll start with quercetin. Quercetin works in order. It works on the cells in the sense that it allows for the zinc that is floating in our bodies that we get from our foods and from different minerals in our foods. It allows zinc to enter. Zinc is very vital in fighting off viruses, but zinc cannot enter a cell on its own. It needs what we call ionophore. Ionophore are ions. Ions meaning like the charge on certain atoms that allow for an entry point of a molecule to get into your cell. So ionophore is quercetin. Quercetin is an ionophore, and it allows for zinc to get in, and zinc can disrupt the RNA-dependent RNA. And the coronavirus depends on RNA-dependent RNA to make its machinery in order to replicate inside your cell and expand throughout the cell and affect other cells. So zinc can disrupt that. So the key is quercetin and zinc. You can get quercetin through red onions, through green leafy vegetables, through capers, through very dark sorts of fruits and vegetables like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and even eggplant as well. So those are ways to get quercetin, and you can buy quercetin as a supplement. I recommend quercetin. I think it's proved to be it hasn't proven to be efficacious to fight COVID. I mean, it's not proven, but it certainly does strengthen your immune system in that regard, and it doesn't hurt you. It's safe.
Okay. I wanted to dispel all those false notions, and I'm gonna let Metasebya jump right in because I don't want her to lose her thought. So go ahead, sis.
No, based on for the mucus, I think also, Lois, if you tell them about the NAC. I think that's where he was heading as well, I guess, was that mucus.
Yep. So yeah, on the other broadcast, I talked about NAC. That's N as in Nancy, A as in alphabet, C as in Charlie, and that stands for N-acetylcysteine. It is a natural, it's not a natural molecule, but cysteine is a natural amino acid, and N-acyl is a natural molecule. They combine those two to work against the connections between sulfur and between sulfur bonds. Sulfur bonds make mucus and Van Willebrand factor, which is part of what makes our blood vessels clot. Clotting factors. Van Willebrand factor can be broken up by N-acetylcysteine. It induces what we call a glutathione reaction, which places hydrogens in between the sulfurs inside of the mucus and split and breaks it up. It does the same thing for Van Willebrand factor. So when we have clots in our blood vessels, it can bust up the clots. And we know that COVID is a vascular disease that causes clots. And we feel that N-acetylcysteine is one healthy way to ingest if you have COVID. It's not something that you would take daily, but if you think that you're at risk and you think you may be coming down with it, it is something that you should consider taking at 600 milligrams per day as a preventative measure for long-term effects. And there's some pretty good data to show how NAC has worked in respiratory infections and preventing those, as well as data showing how helpful they have been in busting up mucus and helpful they've been with busting up clots. I will also say that the process of breaking up sulfur bonds between each other, you can see as hairdressers use what we call permanent solutions. And those permanent solutions, they use hydrogen peroxide, and that hydrogen comes in between the sulfurs that breaks up the hair, that allows the hair follicles and to break up from each other. So we know it works in that regard. So that's what I wanted to say.
Brother Jeffries, how do we get it? How does it come? Now N-acetylcysteine, you have to buy it. It's not naturally in plants. Cysteine is, but cysteine alone wouldn't do it. Cysteine is an amino acid. They combine acetyl and the acetyl molecule with cysteine. You could buy it from your normal health food store and find good quality. You make sure you get high quality N-acetylcysteine.
Okay, since we opened the door to talking about things that can be beneficial, I really wanted to move forward into that phase of our conversation today. But again, I just want to be able to dispel some of the notions out there, because things get repeated and people don't have any clarity on them with them, and they might be headed down roads that they don't necessarily need to travel and deal with unnecessary anxiety or stress because they're believing something that may or may not be true.
Right.
There is one question from Sharon Jefferson, and the question is, can the current available vaccines harm people with autoimmune diseases? And before you answer that question, I will just let you know that after we deal with this question, we're going to talk about things that you can do to be a healthier person, in addition to taking the shot that they're proposing or some of the others that get rolled out. So who wants to take that one? Can the current available vaccines harm people with autoimmune disease?
Yeah, shout outs to Sharon Jefferson, great sister out of Cleveland, and particularly my sister.
Oh, that's your sister?
Right. So shout out to Sharon Jefferson.
Real?
Yeah, that's my sister. Make sure you go to the East U Church Martin Luther King Days program that she has every year for the last 25 years. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. She does an essay contest for that. So shout outs to Sharon Jefferson.
Okay. Well, hello, Sharon. It's been a while. Glad to see you on the broadcast.
Yes. So autoimmune diseases. Yes, you think when we look at lipid nanoparticles and we look at the messenger RNA misreads that could potentially happen, the mistranslations that can happen, those mistranslations can create foreign proteins. And certainly those mistranslations, as well as the foreign lipid nanoparticles that are combining with your plasma membranes of your actual cells, could certainly mount an autoimmune response to those compounds. So I would say yes to that question.
Okay. We have a question from Ginger Baker, and she is asking, you mentioned in the podcast the importance of taking vitamin D3 in order to help fight the virus. Can you give us a recommended daily dosage?
Thank you for asking that question. I first want to make sure that everybody knows to go to their doctor and ask their doctor to check their calcifidiol levels. That's the active form of vitamin D in our bodies. That's the 25-hydroxy D3. And the healthy level for calcifidiol is between 70 nanograms per milliliter to 100 nanograms per milliliter. And actually between 50 to 70 is a healthy dose. And for people with heart disease or kidney disease, or that are overweight, meaning the basal metabolic index is above the obesity standard, they should have more of their vitamin D or calcifidiol in their system, and they should be at 70 nanograms per milliliter to 100. So the question is that how much you should take. The recommended amount would be 4,000 IU per day. That would be equivalent to 2 tablets per day. 2,000 IUs amounts to about 62 micrograms, and you would take 2 tablets of those. So 2 tablets would be 4,000 IU per day. And you should take even more than that if you are morbidly obese or obese. You should take more than that if you have kidney dysfunction. You should take more than that. Typically, people with darker skin, our African community of darker skin, or people around the world with darker skin, need more vitamin D3, where typically vitamin D3 is deficient because our skin protects us from UV rays, which is a good thing, and it provides, because of that great melanin that we have, but it does, we do need more sunlight, and we don't get it in northern hemisphere above the 35th parallel. So even with our food, we can't even eat enough food, and I would be the first to say you should get your vitamins from your food, but with vitamin D3, don't mess around with it. Make sure that you get supplementation, because it is vital for prevention with COVID. It is vital for the prevention of COVID.
Okay, I think I might need to take some vitamin C or vitamin D or something, because I mispronounced Ginger Jackson's name.
Oh, Ginger Jackson, yes. Yeah, Ginger. Shout out to Ginger.
Ginger said it's Ginger Jackson. So we just got another question. Can someone talk about the drug ivermectin has been used in COVID-19 or to prevent COVID-19 and help to get patients with COVID-19 back to health? Perhaps this is one of those things that you can do to protect yourself. So we can address that. But I want to get back to vitamin D3, the high fructose corn syrup, the obesity that affects the absorption or the use of vitamin D3 as a preventive measure. We'll talk about those, but who wants to field that question?
I don't know enough about ivermectin. And Meta, if you can look up, while we're talking, we can go in D3 and talk about, if you can look up the mechanism of action, I'll speak on it. Because a lot of times with compounds, I go by the mechanism of action and what I feel may be helpful in the human body. And I don't know enough about ivermectin. Somebody else mentioned that on another broadcast, and I should have looked it up. But I don't know enough about it to speak on it. But we can, if Dr. Solomon can look it up while we talk about some other things, and and then we can look at the mechanism of action of it.
Okay, and also I would like to have you drop in the private chat, and you can drop it in the comment section too, how folks can get to the Dirty Beaker, because I'm sure you discussed things on that show that will be helpful, and we definitely want to connect the folks who are watching here to your platform so they can continue to be informed about the things that you're bringing to the public. So with that, you want to talk about a bit more about vitamin D3, Brother Lewis?
Yes, yes. So with vitamin D, as I mentioned on the other segment, vitamin D is not only a vitamin, it's a hormone. And it's a hormone that can literally get inside the cell, but not only the cell, there are vitamin D receptors on the nucleus of cells, which is very rare for a vitamin to be able to enter inside the nucleus of a cell. The nucleus has its own special membrane. Remember I talked about the plasma membrane coating the cell. Inside the plasma membrane protects the nucleus, and it protects other cellular machinery. The nucleus is very special because the DNA and all your chromosomes are inside the nucleus. You don't want readily for things to be able to enter there, but vitamin D has a nuclear receptor. And vitamin D, once it is, the calcifidiol needs to be transmitted into another form, which is 125 vitamin D3. And that's the active form of which it is utilized, and it can go to your kidneys. And your kidneys make that 125 hydroxy D3 to build your calcium for your bone absorption and resorption technology within your body. And it also the 125 hydroxy D3 also goes to your T cells and B cells. And that's important because it stimulates the transcription factors, meaning that it allows for the transcription of those cells to manufacture what is necessary to mount a proper immune response to not only COVID virus, but any sort of virus that hits your body. So vitamin D3 is very, very special in mounting that, helping mount the immune response through transcription factors on T cells and B cells. Anything else about vitamin D3 that I want to say? Yes, so in mounting immune response is very important. Oh, the other very important thing that I want to say is that there is another antimicrobial protein called cathelicidin. That's CALTHLICIDIN. Cathelicidin. And it actually is an antimicrobial that can attack COVID on the spot, and is active in your upper respiratory tract. And if you get stimulation from the sun to activate your vitamin D3 and you are supplementing, if you are exposed to the coronavirus, you do need those innate immune responses. And cathelicidin is part of what we call the innate immune response, the immediate attack on the virus once it hits or tries to even get into the cell, before it even gets to the cell. Cathelicidin is heightened by the intake of vitamin D3.
Okay. We talked about the impact that high fructose corn syrup has on D3. We haven't talked about it in this particular program. So for the benefit of those who weren't able to join us on the radio broadcast, could you talk about that? And could you also talk about the impact that obesity has on D3? And then after that, we're going to take a question from Dr. Anki Turi on how the testicles are an entry point.
Yes. Okay, so I'm not going to share it. I'll just go through it. Okay, so with
you want me to share it?
You want to share that slide with the sunlight and the liver and the kidneys?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Meta. Dr. Solomon, we call her Meta.
Okay, as soon as I see that pop up in my window, I'll post it to the screen.
Okay. So in going into that, Vince, thank you for mentioning that. It's very, very important because all of us have orange juice in our, not all of us, I don't use orange juice anymore now that I know, but orange juice is intensely loaded with high fructose corn syrup. And high fructose corn syrup is in a lot of our condiments like ketchup, barbecue sauce, mustard, all sorts of our canned fruits, some of our canned vegetables. It's loaded in a lot of our sugary meals that we eat. And high fructose corn syrup, as you can look at it here, I have it abbreviated as HFCS, and that is high fructose corn syrup, and it literally stimulates 24-hydroxylase, which is an enzyme that deactivates 1,25-hydroxy D3, and 1,25-hydroxy D3 has all of those compounds that I mentioned that stimulates cathelicidin, that stimulates T cell and B cell transcription factors. All of that useful vitamin D that's in our body is counterproductive if you intake high fructose corn syrup, because high fructose corn syrup establishes this 24-hydroxylase, which inactivates 1,25-hydroxy D3. So it's extremely important. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Vince, or I would have been remiss in not mentioning that on this show. That's one of the most important things that I can say. Remove high fructose corn syrup from your diet. When you go to the grocery stores, if anything that you buy has it in it, look at the ingredients, remove it. Do not eat it. And I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know how pervasive it is, because, you know, we know that they use it in the pop or the sodas, depending on where you live, what you call it. But we know that,
That's right.
you know, I mean, you got 14.5 teaspoons of sugar in those beverages. And then, you know, you talked about orange juice, and people drink stuff like Sunny D. Well, Sunny D is 10% juice and 90% water and sugar, and it's fructose corn syrup, you know. Then you have all the baked goods, and you think something like whole wheat bread that you buy at the store. Well, that whole wheat bread is sweetened with high fructose corn syrup.
Thank you,
look at your cookies and your cakes and your pies and all that, and it's high fructose corn syrup. And then from ingesting those things, then you have a certain level of obesity that occurs. And then the obesity is also another factor in a depleted immune system. So could you talk a little bit about the impact that the high fructose corn syrup has on obesity and the relationship of that to immunity?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. Yes. So high fructose corn syrup, and I have a segment on the Dirty Beaker that we're going to do on digestion. High fructose corn syrup becomes extremely bioavailable and to increase your glycemic index, meaning the glucose in your bloodstream. It overwhelms the bloodstream with glucose, which can coat the cells. It wreaks havoc on your liver, kidney, and it creates heart disease, as well as obesity, because your adipose tissues and your adipose cells utilize it to make more and more fat. And the slide that we had up that showed the liver, it also showed the vasculature. And when the vitamin D3 is manufactured through sunlight and through the intake, it goes into the bloodstream. And in between the, so you have the epidermis is one layer of skin, then you have the dermis, then after the dermis, you will have fat, a layer of fatty tissue. And then you have the blood vessels. The fatty tissue begins to squeeze and intrude upon the blood vessels that allow for D3, the calcifidiol to be released into your system. So it interferes with your ability to utilize the D3 that you would readily have available. And so it becomes very important to reduce your weight, for one, to reduce and also reduce high fructose corn syrup that is causing the weight gain, in order to utilize your D3 in a more proper way.
Okay. I just posted in the chat a link to your YouTube channel. When I can get to it, I'm gonna put a crawler across the screen so people can know where they can find you on YouTube. And I noticed that you have 47 subscribers. I think we need to have everybody that's in the chat and everybody that's viewing this video right now to go to YouTube. When you get an opportunity, go to YouTube and like and subscribe to All Our Culture Liberation Lab. It's ALLRQULTURE Liberation Lab. Subscribe, like it, and let's blow this platform up so folks can be tuned in to all the good information that you're bringing to us.
Yes.
So we want to answer that question that came from Dr. Ankh Ituri, and thank you for asking the question. Was how can you explain how the testicles are an entry point?
Yes. So the seminiferous tubules are part of the testes, and the seminiferous tubules have receptors. So all cells have certain proteins on them that allow for your cells to do what is necessary for them to do. And in order for the seminiferous tubules to work properly, they need the ligand to hit the CD147 receptors on them. The COVID virus actually utilizes CD147 as an entry point. There is actually a company, I forgot what country it's coming out of. They're trying to develop a compound, a monoclonal antibody to block the CD147 receptor on the seminiferous tubules, and as well as all over the body, because the CD147 receptors are not only on seminiferous tubules, but they're on other cells in the body that creates an entry point for COVID-19. So that's how it enters. It enters through the CD147 receptor.
Okay. And tell us about the dirty beaker. How can folks get to view that?
Yes. So I believe that Dr. Solomon, you could tell them more. I founded it, but I just give the information out of love and the heart, and we have a great productions crew that puts it out, and I don't really know the best way. I just do it for love. But Dr. Solomon, can you tell them more about how we can, you can see it, how you can get involved with that?
Yeah, it's on a YouTube channel, all the files we have. And we're gonna add all those interviews we've been doing on radio interviews. We're gonna add it on TV, on those YouTube channels as well. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email. It's at allourculture@gmail.com. And if you want us to cover any information, or if you want to get more information that we haven't covered, send us an email, and we'll be happy to respond to that as well. So far, we don't go live, but we just record it and then post it. But if you have any comments, let us know on our email address.
Okay, so do me a favor, because I'm doing a whole bunch of things at one time. If you could drop what you just shared in the chat, then I'll make sure to put it on the crawler across the bottom of the screen, so folks can know how to reach out to you and get in touch with you, and also be able to view your programs.
Okay.
I just got to ask one more question. Well, at least I got to ask this question.
Yes.
And it's been of my concern from my line of profession, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners may be interested as well. And it's how do you feel from the track in the way we're going right now, as far as dealing with this vaccine, seeing taking polls and seeing how people feel about taking the vaccine, and I guess to the extent of this new strand and spread mandates. What are your feelings about mandates? You think they toying around with it, or you think the hammer's going to come down somewhere further on to maybe further whatever agenda that they may be looking at right now?
They are coming, and that's one reason why we did one of our segments, because as I was talking about COVID vaccines and the problems that I have with them, Dr. Solomon had texted me, and she had sent me what Dr. Cynthia McKinney had said about them. Dr. Solomon, do you want to speak to that first, and then I can go into a little bit of it?
Which one?
About the situation where Dr. Cynthia McKinney had sent the information out on Twitter as far as making mandates to take the vaccine in order to get our social safety networks, social safety opportunities.
Yes. So based on some of the COVID group that they have formed, so they came back together to talk about, okay, how can we get this to the people? So they're coming back with long-term tying it to our government assistance programs. So if you have getting any Medicare, Medicaid, or food stamp, they're gonna associate it that if you don't take those vaccines, you won't get those services. So this is documented on the COVID group that the Biden administration has put together, and as well as from the Trump administration following up. So it's very well documented. That's the recommendation, and forcing people to take the vaccine. So they're gonna tie it to your social assistance programs.
Yeah, and you can see, you can see what that means as far as the working class, the poor, and our people that have a disproportionate amount that are working class and lower income.
Yeah, it's available. That document, that PDF, it's available. If anyone is interested, I can share it to Vince later on. I have it saved. It's publicly available, where they're suggesting about those as tying the vaccine with those assistance programs. So it makes you wonder, why now?
Yeah.
So with that being said, there are those out here who have brought into the consciousness of the public exemptions. Do you know anything, or can you speak to the possibility of people being able to obtain exemptions so that they would not be forced to take a vaccine that they don't think morally or ethically they should require to be taken?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think in sticking to the science on it, I think that people should say that there is not appropriate safety on these vaccines, and they cannot be imposed or mandated on the people based on inadequate safety on them. And I think it's up to scientists. I challenge all of our science community to help the people to challenge it on a scientific term and stop buying into propaganda. We need more scientists to challenge other scientists that are coming on and buying into the propaganda. There is one other there's one other thing that people are saying a lot. I see that in social media a lot, in the fact that that vaccine companies have utilized embryonic cells in order to manufacture these proteins, and that there is some way to get beyond that for religious reasons. I don't know legally whether that is viable or not, because I'm not an attorney, but I would recommend people to talk to an attorney to see if that is viable in a way to do it. And one thing is to say that we're not necessarily anti-vax. We're for safer vaccines. We don't feel that the 3 vaccines that are coming out right now are safe enough for the human population. The safety is not done on those. And we think that the general population should challenge the government to say, okay, well, if you want us to take a vaccine, we've done our homework. We've listened to the Dirty Beaker series. We've been on 360, and we know the science now. We want a vaccine that we feel that is safe and tried through safety. And we are not taking any vaccine that is an experimental vaccine, and we're not accepting the fact that it will be legally mandated. That should be against the law.
Yeah.
Good question. What
And
think
can I add to that for the women in a childbearing age, or the men as well, based on even what the company said about, breastfeeding or pregnancy, any of that possibilities, they should give that as an excuse to be exempt from that as well.
Yeah, just one other footnote here. When we dealing with mandates and legalness, I don't think I hear too much conversation about it. But what I remember a while ago in dealing with the Patriot Act 2, when it had provisions in there talking about a pandemic and them being able to force some issues there.
With the Patriot Act, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some language in there about them being able to force or to declare some type of mandate in the case of a pandemic. I read a little bit in it, but that's something we can go and research and just see exactly what you can and cannot do, or what they can and cannot do. But there is some provisions in there. If declaring an epidemic or pandemic, they can force some issues.
That sounds likely. We could probably do a whole segment on that.
Well, when you think about the language itself, they created an emergency that requires urgency. So now we have Operation Warp Speed. And with Operation Warp Speed, we have a rush to proliferate a vaccine that has not been, based on what you've said, has not been properly tested. If it hasn't been properly tested in animals and it hasn't been properly tested in human beings, then we have no idea what the long-term effects of the vaccine might be. So again, this rush, and the urgency is the spread of the virus, and we haven't talked about how this virus has spread around the world and why there are some countries that don't have the extent of spread in their countries as we do here, nor do they have the extent of morbidity in those countries as we do here. So can we talk a little bit about the impact of geography on the spread of these viruses and the morbidity that's related or associated with it?
Yes, Dr. Solomon had an excellent slide that she produced regarding that, because we found it in our conversations, scientific conversations. We found it just really odd that the death rates are so much lower in Africa, yet you're looking at the population of people that they're trying to promote it to. You're trying to get LeBron James to take it. You're trying to get you got Kamala Harris to take it and then come out and say, "Oh, this is a wonderful thing. Trust the science." You try to get Kismita Corbett, Dr. Corbett, to say, "Oh, she's the inventor of it." So black people go out there and get it. So we get all this hyper focus on African bodies, yet you have no hyper focus on European bodies. So we looked it up, and then so Meta looked at the mortality rates, and Dr. Sullivan, you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, before you start, is it possible for you to enlarge the screen so that we can see what's in it? Can you explain?
Yeah, I'm putting it on a you're not seeing. I'm putting it on a show on a screen show. Do you see that, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, we see the slide, but it's so small we can't see it. So if you can expand that slide to be a full view, perhaps we would have a better view of the information. So you eliminate the slides on the side and make your slide take up the whole screen.
Like this? That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
How about now?
That's better
now. Now we can see.
Okay. Better now?
Yeah, you're reducing the size of it. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was putting it on a slideshow, so I guess that's not working.
Okay. So if you speak the information, then we can get it both ways.
Okay. So what we was looking at here, they said in the United States, most of the population affected, as they say, is African American. But if you go to United Kingdom, most affected are the Middle Eastern and the East Asian. It's also based on the location and the urban the communication, how they commute public transportation they used. But if we look at in the United States, this is, I'm gonna go up because, okay, so this is not working for me. Would slideshow work? If I put it in a slideshow, would you be able to see it?
Yes.
So if we look at the United States, the deaths and the case fatality rate, the death rate is about 1.7. Deaths per 100,000 population is about 100. But if we look at the United Kingdom, it's 3.1. It's almost double than the United States. But if we look at Belgium and Italy and France, they're even much higher than the US. But they're not even pushing this vaccine as much as we are. They're putting on hold and putting this vaccine. So we have to ask ourselves, why are they pushing it here in the African American population when the Belgium, Italy, France, and other places in Europe, even though they have a much higher fatality rate than the US, they haven't even started using this vaccine. So we have to ask these questions.
And could those percentages be affected by the number of people in those countries? I know they say 300 to maybe 330 million people in America, but some of the populations that you indicated may have smaller populations, so that the morbidity could be a consequence of the relationship between the number of people who are dying and the number of people who live in those countries.
Yeah, so the death number is the number of deaths is per 100,000 per population in that area. It's not by the total population.
Okay.
So if you look at that, they have a much higher rate than the US.
Okay, and could you speak to the mortality rates and the number of cases in African countries?
It's much lower, actually. I don't have it here, but if I go back to this website, it can give you the African areas. It's lower than the US.
Well, you had a slide, Meta, on there. I thought you had one slide.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. I have a slide on that.
I think that's kind of curious, too, that if you have a much lower rate in those countries, why aren't they speaking to that?
Yeah, so this slide, right, Louis? So you want to talk about it? So here's the slide as well. You can talk about it.
Well, I mean, it's not much more to talk about outside of the fact that you look at the rates and the mortality.
In African countries, Kenya, South Africa, Algeria is much lower.
Yeah, one thing, again, you kind of like when we look at D3 deficiencies and you look at the Southern Hemisphere, you have to wonder also, being that there's more exposure to sunlight and that stimulates more activity with D3, whether there is a connection between that. That is something that researchers are looking at as well.
I'd also be curious about the obesity rates in those countries, because America, comparatively speaking, probably has a higher rate of obesity than some of the other countries just based on what we eat. We eat a lot of processed food. We eat a lot of food that has a high fructose corn syrup, and we're not quite as active. I mean, Louis, you've been to Africa before. You know how active folks are there, and when I looked around, because I've been there several times, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like the exception, and it could just be that that's what I'm looking for. But I just noticed that there's a certain level of fitness, When I visited the Cape Coast dungeon, and I looked at those fishermen, and see their lifestyle, they grow up pulling in the rope. Every day pulling in the rope. So those brothers, buff. They like you, Louis. I mean, but seriously speaking, you see people are active. You see them doing a lot more walking. We'll get in an Uber, when we just need to go around the corner. Walking, they have active lifestyle, so they're burning calories. and they're not eating the same degree of processed food and other junk food that we eat, which is not to say that they don't, you
Yes.
know. And
Yes.
it's really tragic too that you see an incursion of KFC, of Wendy's, of McDonald's, and so they're wanting to adapt, you know, the American lifestyle, you know. But to look at that, it just seems a little bit detrimental. But I said all that to say that it could be that they might be healthier because they have different lifestyles, and the lifestyle that we have in America does not contribute to having a strong immune system.
Yeah, and one thing about the immune system with that, Vince, you broached upon a great subject, and clearly obesity plays a factor, but also what Meta mentioned before regarding the age, and as well as Hamptonio, the average age of the African continent is below 20, the average age. And we already know that there is more innate immunity. There's more interferon. There's more interferon alpha, interferon gamma, interferon beta that is stimulated in youth. And as you get older, your interferon levels decrease. And so if you have a younger population that's more fit, that gets more vitamin D, then you're going to have, it would seem epidemiologically that you would have less incidence of serious effects from COVID. Not to say that you will have less COVID, but less serious outcomes from COVID based on the youth, the risk factor of obesity being removed, and the ability to be outside in the sunlight, getting more vitamin D.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just one
the
more
people
question.
are more on the street, you know, they're walking, so they're getting a lot of vitamin D from the sunlight, direct sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more question. You know, I may have to leave the broadcast shortly, but I know we spoke on it before, and it's keep resonating in my mind about the coagulation and dealing with the clots with this, dealing with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What is, you know, I know one of the guys talked about, one of my other doctor friends talked about exercising, and I know when people deal with high blood pressure, they always try to tell them to take aspirin. I'm not sure I'm suggesting that, but is it any other things that we can do to help prevent against the formation of clots and things like that occurring?
Yes. I'm glad you asked that question, because again, COVID is a vascular disease. It's more so a vascular disease than a respiratory disease. So you have to address that. And to reduce your level of clots, there are a lot of things that you can do. One would be exercise, like you mentioned. The other one would be, if you feel like you're going to be infected with COVID, to start taking that. The other is what you would do on a everyday basis. You want to get more omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 fatty acids into your system, and you could get that through almonds, walnuts. Metasebya is from Ethiopia, and they have black seeds. Black seeds that's where black seeds really come from, that region of Africa. But they have black seeds here in the United States, and they're very great because they have omega-3, 6 and 9 inside of them. The sesame seeds are very good. Sunflower seeds are very good. Safflower oil, coconut oil. These are healthy fats. Also avocados. Also garlic, because garlic takes down inflammation and attacks free radicals. There are reactive oxygen species that are very dangerous, that COVID starts in our vasculature, in our veins, and our arteries. Reactive oxygen species, and garlic and ginger and all these black seeds and the omega-6, omega-3, and omega-9 are vital for making sure that our vasculature is smooth and clean and removing these reactive oxygen species, as well as what causes atherosclerosis with inflammation within our blood vessels, and as well as overwhelming saturated fats. So those are the things that we should consider in reducing our risk for vascular problems due to COVID.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, we've been on for almost 2 hours. You know, that's the length of a feature-length movie, and we've had folks who have hung in here for the entire time, and they could have been anywhere. They could have been watching college football or whatever's out there right now as a distraction. But I just want to thank you all so much for all this vital information that you have provided with us. I'm sure that those who have seen this have obtained the benefit of the wealth of knowledge that you have, you know, and I want to reiterate the point that you made, Brother Lewis, is that none of us are anti-vaccine. We're not saying that you should not take vaccines. What we're concerned about is, and what concerns you have expressed, is that perhaps the vaccines that are being rolled out are not tested to the extent that they should be. And I think intuitively, and this is just Vince thinking out loud in my head and then sharing it with you, you know, the fact that 6 out of 10 Black Americans have reservations. It may not be because they understand the technology the way that you do. It could be that there's just that intuitive aspect within them that says, I'm not so sure about this. And, you know, when we have these conversations, we always go back to Tuskegee. You know, that's the popular thing that crops up in the conversations. And it's fact. It did happen, you know, and we don't have a short-term memory about that because it was not that long ago. So, you know, when you look at the history of certain folks, and I'm not going to say who, but I think we all know who I'm talking about. When you look at history, you can see a pattern, especially when it comes to the treatment of us.
Yes.
So again, I return to that intuitive. The intuitive part of us is our connection with that unseen force that deals with all things that exist.
Yes.
And I'm sure everybody know what I'm talking about right now. I ain't got to say no names. I'm not talking about a religion or anything else. I'm talking about what is that is. Okay.
Yes.
So again, I thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to ask the questions. You know, we got some great questions from the folks who are watching us on YouTube and on Facebook, and this will be posted. I posted your email address, so if people have questions about how to get in touch with you, want to take advantage of the platforms that you're on right now, they can reach out to you, and I'm sure that they will get a response. So with that, I'd like to thank my co-host, Hamptonio Lynn Hampton, for joining us and asking those probing, insightful questions. I would like to thank you for providing the answers that we have been seeking for a long time. And I would welcome the opportunity as things develop to have another conversation with you so we can talk about what has happened since we had this conversation. So with that, I say peace and blessings, Hotep, Hetep to all who understand what that means. And may you all experience great health. Go out there, get some sunshine. You know, there are parts of the day when it's the best time to be out, when we have sun.
I'm headed out there now.
Yes.
Yes, and I think 2 o'clock is the magic hour. So
for up here,
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go out there and let the sun shine on my face too, and look forward to the next time that we have a conversation.
Yeah.
Preacher, well, I want to say one other thing. Good information, Brother Jefferson and Sister Solomon. I enjoyed the conversation. You have surely enlightened me, and I'm gonna spread that message and refer back to you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
It was a pleasure.
All right. And as I always say in parting, you know, Don Cornelius was my hero. He inspired me to go to Kent State University. But my thing is, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Peace, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Peace.
Peace.